think I waited too long to retire. Welcome to my dojo. This is KungFuPizzaPrty, and I'm your host, Brandon Knight. And today is Friday the 13th, but not just any Friday the 13th. No, it is the Friday the 13th before Valentine's Day. And so if you will indulge me, I am here today to review My Bloody Valentine 3D. Here on KungFuPizzaPrty, I seek to deliver high-flying action in 30 minutes or less and serve up some wisdom one slice at a time. And if you're new here to the show normally, that is by me reviewing kung fu, ninja, samurai flicks, other forms of martial art media. Rarely, this is a rare exception, where I am here today to talk about an outright slasher flick. Now, I have talked about here on the show before that I do think the horror movie genre is one that pairs nicely with other forms of media, other genres, but this is an outright slasher flick. There is nothing remotely martial art or really much to say about the combat in general in this film. There's a general lack of it. But here's the thing. There is something about a movie, especially like a slasher flick, where this gives my big martial artist brain an opportunity to kind of play a little bit of a game, a little bit of a, okay, so what would I do if I was being attacked by a pickaxe wielding maniac? I know that kind of makes me sound like one of those, quote, reality-based instructors that you see online whose instructions are far, far removed from the realm of reality, even if they are calling it reality based, because the situations are oftentimes like the situations and tactics are oftentimes like, really, that's what we're going to focus on here. So I'm not trying to say that it is possible or even highly likely that you will be attacked by a pickaxe wielding maniac at some point in your life, but just as a fun intellectual or lack thereof exercise, I'm going to talk a little bit about like, okay, so as a martial artist, how would I defend myself against a pickaxe wielding maniac in this episode? So let's get to the basics first, though. So My Bloody Valentine 3D is a remake of the original 1980s cult slasher flick, My Bloody Valentine. And this movie, I would say, in an era full of requels and unnecessary 20 years later sequels and reboots and all of that, this movie, if you haven't seen My Bloody Valentine 3D, is similar to the Karate Kid 2010 with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, or Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead film, where there are some connecting points. It does help if you know the source material, but overall, it is a fairly original story, independent from the rest of the installment. It can very easily be watched on its own. I watched this without ever seeing the original My Bloody Valentine, and I don't think it really made too big of a difference. They cover it pretty well. There are some connecting points, but it honestly is its own independent thing that could, and in the case of the Karate Kid 2010, was actually could be retconned back into the main continuity in the future. And bringing it together with the rest of the main continuity of the franchise, which only is the one other film. Somehow this is a horror series with only 2 movies in it. I didn't know horror movies could just be 2 parts. I thought you had to at least have a minimum of 5 installments to be a true horror series. But the original vision of the director for My Bloody Valentine 3D, it was to make this into a several film franchise that would start drawing back more on the original film and more connecting points However, though My Bloody Valentine 3D was a financial success, the critics' review not so much, and so Lionsgate ended up losing interest in doing future installments. But if you are a fan of these movies and you are still hoping that one day these will all be connected together, I do have good news for you, because guess who has the film rights and is planning on doing another movie here within the next couple years and is in love with retconning and connecting things together? That's right, folks. Blumhouse. Blumhouse is going to be doing a new My Bloody Valentine within the near future. I don't remember reading like a specific release date yet, but they do have the rights. They do plan on making one soon, and whether it will be good or not is 50-50 shot when it comes to Blumhouse. Man, when they're on, they're on, and when they're not on, it is a miss. But so that's a lot of the basics. Some of the connecting points, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Some of the connecting points between the original and this remake. So the original killer, Harry Warden, and the event, his bloody massacre from the original movie, are mentioned, especially Harry Warden. There for a while, they think he may still be alive in this remake. Outside of that, we also do have the fact that both movies take place right around Valentine's Day, and the killer does do the calling card of cutting out the hearts of their victims and placing it in a heart-shaped Valentine's chocolate box to then send to somebody else. Outside of those things, again, the movie is fairly original story-wise, but those are some of the connecting points to the original. And outside of that part, I would say like a lot of the other aspects of this movie are going to be very familiar to you if you are a horror fan. The small town atmosphere that these murders take place at, and a lot of the complicated relationships that the characters have in this town, it really reminds me of Twin Peaks. It's giving Twin Peaks vibes here. But also the fact that this is a slasher that is more along the lines of like a whodunit murder mystery, trying to figure out who is the killer, who is the minor, as he is referred to in this film. That gives me more of like a Scream vibe than like other slashers. Like, you know who Jason is, you know who Michael Myers is, versus like you don't really, they're trying to figure out who is this person committing these murders. So on paper, then, a Twin Peaks make it Scream, I mean, at least for me and my horror movie love and heart, that's a slam dunk. That is, I guess Scream does kind of have, at least with some of the original, some of the like interconnected, complicated relationships between the characters kind of is Twin Peaks like. But you need that small town, quirky small town atmosphere too to be truly Twin Peaks. And so on paper, that should work. It should work really well. My Bloody Valentine 3D came out in 2009, but I didn't have to tell you that. You already knew that, because the title of the movie is literally My Bloody Valentine 3D. Do you remember that time period between, like, I don't know, maybe 2008 and 2012 where every movie had to be shot for IMAX 3D? What was that about? Do we know what that was about? Did the technology just get like easier, simpler and so that was like, okay, now we're all going to hop on, filmmakers are like, all right, we're going to all hop on this trend and shoot everything for IMAX 3D. I'm sure the success of the original Avatar film probably played a big part into the desire to make everything 3D, and I am convinced that part of the reason the Transformers series did so well there in the 2010s is because of the push for 3D, IMAX 3D with those films. But here's the thing. Even though there was also a push for 3D home entertainment options, which went over like a lead balloon because we all don't have 3D options at home now, do we, folks? There's just something incredibly dated and silly about watching a made for 3D film in 2D. It doesn't matter if it's a slasher, a kids movie, or one of the old Three Stooges shorts that they shot for 3D when they first started working on the technology. It's just kind of goofy looking when you have those intentionally 3D moments put into the film. And yeah, the first couple jump scares of the pickaxe coming really close and out of the screen is terrifying, and there is every millennial's greatest fear, the one thing that we can all agree on: a tree goes through the front windshield of a car out the back at one point. And so, yeah, that's terrifying. That we all agree that that's terrifying. But outside of that, it just looks silly when you sit down to watch it in a 2D format. And that takes me to, if you are like over listening to this podcast episode, you want to move on to other things, here's the thesis, okay? You shouldn't bury the thesis halfway through the episode, but here's the short review if you're ready to just move on to other things. My Bloody Valentine 3D is comically bad. Not it's so bad it's good, because that means I enjoyed it. It's comically bad, meaning I was bullying this film by laughing at it. It was like, this is just bad. This is just so bad. This movie, even if you take out the cheesy looking made for 3D moments that are just awkwardly flat in 2D, and you take away the now rather dated CGI used for the kills. I know that makes me sound pretentious when you bring that kind of stuff up, but it does. That it does look a little cheesy with some of the CGI effects for the kills in this movie. When you take those parts out, the movie is still just like kind of bad, but in a make fun of it kind of way, particularly because it does indulge in like every horror trope you can imagine. If there is a bad decision that the characters could make, they're going to make that decision. No matter how little of logic there could be implemented, they're going to make the bad decision. Here's a little self-defense note for you. There's a scene in the third act where there's a couple people, they work at a grocery store, and it's past closing, but they hear a noise and they think the killer has gotten into the store. So they decide to go investigate rather than take the 12 steps that they need to take to get out of the building. They are right by the front door. Don't put yourself in harm's way, folks. Just leave. The killer can have all the Twix bars that they want at that point. Clearly, another comically bad scene. Clearly, the killer has a sugar addiction, because there's a scene, and Claire walked in. She was at work. She came in for like the last 10, 15 minutes of this movie and was immediately over it after sitting and watching it for 2 minutes. But there's a scene, one of the characters from this grocery store scene is in the cabin in the middle of nowhere at night, because again, if there's a horror movie decision you shouldn't make, they make that decision in this movie. There's the final girl, I should say, the final girl of the film. She's in the cabin where the killer has been hiding out, and she opens a closet door, and I'm not even joking about this. This isn't me doing a bit here. There's easily 50 empty chocolate boxes, heart-shaped chocolate boxes that fall out of this closet on top of her. Maybe even more than 50, honestly. And it's again just okay, let's just use a little bit of, let's just think for 1 second. I know, you shouldn't think that much with certain horror movies, but I'm just going to have to think a little bit here, because if we already know that the killer does this thing by putting hearts in the heart chocolate boxes, then I don't know, pull the cameras of the one grocery store in town and see who's buying an obnoxiously amount of chocolate heart-shaped boxes. That could really narrow down the search quite easily if we find out that so-and-so bought 50 boxes of chocolate in one setting, or came back 5 times to buy 10 boxes each time. I know I shouldn't be thinking that much, but again, this movie just indulges in every like horror thing you can imagine. There's a whole, again, I'm not even trying to exaggerate here to be funny. It's like 5 to 7 minutes of a bare naked full frontal woman just running around being chased by the killer. There's like a sex scene followed by this woman chasing down the guy she was doing because he's a dick, and then the killer starts chasing her around, and again, it's like 5 to 7 minutes of this, and it's just, why do horror movies feel the need to do that? I don't get it. Because we all know how it ends. It all just ends with this beautiful woman being gutted. Like, that's all that this ends up being. Why? And it does. It just over and over and over again. Even if you take away the cheesy made for 3D shots and the some of the like really bad dated CGI in this movie, it still is just like, it's not that good. It is comically bad. I will give it a few things though. First off, just no matter what I said about the comically bad made for 3D aspect of it, this is actually the very first R-rated 3D film. It predates Saw 3D by an entire year. So in the history of 3D, it is like a pillar of the history of 3D effects for films. By the way, when do you think YouTube's going to start doing 3D? Or are we past that now? Because it seems like that would be like something that content creators could immediately kill if they started doing made for 3D YouTube videos. Another thing I wanted to like positively say about this film is the cast. The acting is meh, but there are some cool people in this film. Our lead is Jensen Ackles. That's right, folks. Dean Winchester is the lead in this film. It's so funny. I've never seen a single episode of Supernatural, but I did watch other CW programming, and since Supernatural was on for 1,000 seasons, even I was like, oh, hey, Dean's in this. We also have Tom Atkins. Tom Atkins has been in everything also. He's been in everything from Escape from New York to Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, most known for being a main character on the Rockford Files back in the day. If there's a movie, he's probably in it. He plays the retired sheriff in the town who is convinced that Harry Warden is dead and that this has to be a copycat killer. That's like his whole thing in this movie. And then finally, we have Jamie King as the final girl. Jamie King is probably most recognized for playing Goldie and Wendy in Sin City and Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. So the acting is meh, but there are some like looking back, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool to see these people in this movie. At least that's fun. Tom Atkins is always a enjoyable person to have around in a movie. And again, it's got a historic, it's historic for being the first R-rated 3D film. So if you like watching films for history, I guess there you go. I will say this right now, because I'm starting to get close on time, and I still have to talk about fighting a pickaxe wielding maniac. So I will say this, that way I don't forget. Would I watch My Bloody Valentine 3D again? I don't. Maybe I would watch it again. I will say this. It didn't turn me off from watching the original. That sometimes happens with horror films, where it's like maybe I've watched a random installment or the first one, and I'll go, okay, that's enough for me. I don't really care to watch anymore. Or wow, I really don't want to go back and watch any of the more Hellraiser films. Nothing has been interesting from that series, but it should be. It's a really interesting concept, but it's not. Poor execution over and over again. But But I will say this was interesting enough that I'm like, okay, I'll go check out the original at some point in the future. I don't need to own a copy of this. The poster is pretty cool because, again, it looks like the pickaxe is coming off of the poster, the flat surface. Perks of having a Letterboxd account, which you can follow, KungFuPizzaPrty. I get to have like this a little collection of tiny little movie posters. It's so fun. I like sometimes when I just want to take a break from doom scrolling, but I want to be on my phone, I pull up my Letterboxd and I'll scroll through my collection of tiny posters. It's kind of fun. Cool poster. I would not purchase this. But I would watch the original just to see how. I know it's like a cult classic, and I mean the 80s were known for slashers, so I'm interested to see how that one is. I know there was some heavy censorship for that original, but our time is starting to draw to an end. So how would you fight a pickaxe wielding maniac? So in the movie, one thing that I can confirm is the fact that shooting him and blowing him up will not do anything. Hitting him with a mop and frozen food actually is super effective. So take all of that for what it's worth. The other thing I want to mention here, though. So I did a little bit of research on pickaxe. They're like 10 pounds between the heavy end piece and the handle. They're about 10 pounds. So it takes a little bit of strength to like whip this thing around. There is a scene where he yeets it off screen, obviously, and it goes through the windshield of a car. And it's a cool visual. I don't know if I necessarily believe that somebody could throw that thing as far as he does one-handed. Maybe if it was more like the one thing in the Olympics where you spin around and then throw it. If it was something like that, then maybe, but he just kind of like yeets it one-handed like it's a frisbee. And I don't know if I believe that. But here's the thing. Because that thing is so big and clunky, obviously it's going to do some damage. Just watch the movie. It does plenty of damage. But the fact that is primarily it. That is all he does. There's one other kill with a shovel, but that's because it was there. Everything is the pickaxe. He doesn't strangle people. He doesn't have other gardening tools on him to kill people with. It's just that. He's not the shoveler from Mystery Men. So here's my thing. Like, if I was attacked by a pickaxe in this really weird, not reality situation, I think if you could evade it, and particularly if you could evade it and it gets stuck, your chances actually go up of survival. Yes, you can use both ends of the thing, and he does do the smart move of typically having both hands on it to wield it so he can kind of maintain control of the weapon. I think if he was constantly one-handing it, he's gonna lose it over and over again. But I think in a situation, if someone was to wield a pickaxe at me, I think if you can evade one of the strikes and then move quickly and hard in, I think you could do some damage. One of the other perks, or one of the other advantages, I should say, for the killer is he wears a headlamp 24/7. He's in a full like coal miner gear here. He doesn't need to be, other than to conceal his identity, which means if you can get close and jack up the mask, you're gonna do some good. He doesn't need it to breathe. He's not Bane or anything like that. But if you can pull it down or smash the lens or anything, knock it off to the side, like then you're disrupting his sight. But that he's got a headlamp on 24/7 when he's in the suit. And so that is disorienting. That is going to affect your eyesight because those things are bright, man. And also it just kind of like puts him in a little bit of a shadow of like you can't quite tell what's going on with this. What is this thing that is standing in front of me? Why is it so bright? So you do have to be prepared for that. So if you can get past the pickaxe, jack up that mask and knock the headlamp off. Get the headlamp off somehow or knock it off to the side, something. By way of what martial arts I think would work great in this situation, I'm thinking fast or strong blows. So you either need to get in there and do some like Wing Chun and multiple strikes, fast hands, you're going all over the place, or something hard hitting like boxing or Kyokushin and you just get in some like big, strong, heavy blows, boxing may actually be very helpful too, because again, if you can cut him off from the pickaxe and you can like corner him, you get some good, jabs and blows in from boxing training. I think you could like beat him down. Obviously, something like a Hapkido where you're doing wrist locks and joints and you can, I don't know, break his wrist or hyperextend his elbow so that way he can't use the pickaxe. That seems like that could be awfully helpful too. So I think there's a lot of ways that you could potentially defend yourself in the event that a pickaxe wielding maniac comes at you. Obviously, I don't think that could potentially happen anytime soon, but I do think you could have a better survival rate than 98% of the characters in this movie. This movie is just fodder. All the characters are fodder to be killed. I'm almost out of time, so I can't go too big on the ending. I will say this to add on to the comically bad parts of the film. It does end on a cliffhanger. And nothing was ever followed up afterwards, so that's funny. But also, when Jamie King, the final girl, finally has it narrowed down to the two people who could be the killer, the two people that the whole time the killer could have been, it is just twist after twist, swerve after swerve, to the point where, you want a good twist in a horror movie, but this was one of those where you're like, I don't even know if the filmmakers knew how they were going to end this movie. So there is a way that I think the movie could have ended that I think would have been the most satisfying way, even though it wouldn't work with some of the previous events in the film. But yeah, I don't want to spoil it, and I'm also almost out of time. So I guess if you really want me to talk more about how I would have ended My Bloody Valentine 3D, then hit me up, and maybe I'll do... I've had the idea of doing an after party episode where I like run down something I didn't have time for. So let me know. Maybe I'll do an after party episode. So thanks for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet already, please rate and review this show wherever you get your podcast. And please, if this was your first episode, come back for some actual martial art media. Please pass this episode along to a friend. Follow the show on Instagram at KungFuPizzaPrty. And you can check out my YouTube channel, Studio 219, a place for faith and pop culture. You can also check out the other great shows here on the Amazon Ministries Podcast Network. We have all kinds of faith and geeky related shows on here. Thanks for listening. This has been Kung Fu Pizza Party, where I have delivered high-flying action in 30 minutes or less, as long as I put the music in a way that doesn't go too far over time, and delivered high-flying action in 30 minutes or less, and served up some wisdom one slice at a time.